I'm jealous of God. Well, that's not 100% accurate. I was jealous of God. That did change, but I want to present this in the present tense, sharing the experience that I went through when it was happening. And I know that it's a very weird statement to make, like, why would I be jealous of God? But I was. And the reason is because, like a lot of, religious people, people who believe in God, whatever, like wherever you fall on that range, um, a lot of people consider God to be the most important thing in their lives, and everything else comes after that, including, spouses, family, friends, and all those things, which, there's no problem with that. I completely respect that. And, my wife has made this very clear from the beginning. It's like, God is the most important thing in her life. And it's never been an issue in the past. But a couple days ago, there was one specific day where for some reason, it just hit me like, shit, my wife loves God more than she loves me. She has always loved God more than she's loved me, and she will always love God more than she loves me. So no matter what, for the rest of my life, the rest of our relationship, I will always come second to God. And that was difficult for me to accept. Now I know it sounds ridiculous to say because, like, well, okay, it's God. Like, you can't compare yourself to God. There's nothing wrong with your wife loving God more than she loves you. It's a different kind of love. And yes, I'm very aware of that. I completely understand how illogical it was for me to feel that way, but that didn't change the fact that for a certain amount of time, I did feel that way. And that was most likely because of how I was raised. I remember at some point my father once told me, and those were his exact words, I would not sacrifice myself to save my children. Which, okay, I get it, survival instinct and everything, but when you hear that from one of your parents, what your brain tells you, especially when you're younger, is, oh, my dad doesn't love me. Which I know is not true. But hearing that statement has had devastating effects on my self confidence. The same as with my mother when she left and she told me, "You're no longer my son." That also completely devastated my self esteem, my belief in myself. And I know that, my dad loves me, and I know that in some way, I'm not quite sure how exactly, how she perceives me, but I know that on some level my mother loves me too, and I know my sister loves me, and, the rest of my family, and my close friends and everything, and obviously my wife, like, she's the person in the entire world who loves me the most. But because of the way I was raised, because of what my parents said, it really affected my self confidence, and I struggled with that for most of my life. Most of my life, I was a people pleaser, I was a perfectionist, I was always putting other people before me, always feeling like I needed to buy love, to buy affection, because I felt like I didn't deserve it. And I worked a lot on that when it comes to, my self-love and self-worth and self-confidence and everything. And definitely not to say that I'm perfect. It's still something I need to work on, but it's definitely much better than it was, which is why it kind of surprised me when that realization hit me of, like, in my wife's eyes, in her heart, I will always come second. And that just triggered all those insecurities from my past. Basically, that inner, like, wounded child, it just triggered all that. And it was very difficult for me to accept. And, because it's very important for my wife and I to have a very open relationship, obviously I shared what I was going through with her. And it's not until I did that I realized how selfish it was. Like, yeah, okay, I was experiencing that. There's nothing wrong with me experiencing something and sharing it, but at the same time, it's like I know how much she loves me, how much she cares about me, how much, effort and energy she's put into our relationship. And I know it would completely devastate her if I end up dying. And she literally loves me than anyone else in the world. The only person that comes before me is God, and that is a different type of relationship. And to her, it's like it felt selfish of me to feel like, to be jealous, really, because it's like, do you know how much I love you? Do you know how much I've sacrificed? Like, for the last over a year, or no, actually 2 years since we've been dating, like she could have ended the relationship at any time. Like when I first came back to Canada, she could have been like, "Oh, he's never gonna come back, so let's just end it here before it goes too far and it's gonna be more painful." Or when I was diagnosed, or any time after that, it's like it would have been very logical for her to end things because I know how difficult this situation is on her, how much pain it's caused her, how much suffering, how much stress and worry and everything. And it's like, yeah, I get that it's selfish of me to be jealous of God and feel like, well, I should be first. But at the same time, it's like that is still what I experienced. And it was a difficult, conversation to have with her. Well, series of conversations, I'd say, over the course of a day. And it's just like it I know that I hurt her a lot by feeling that way, but at the same time it's like, you know, I can't help how I feel. That's just how I felt at the moment, and it sucked. And, it sucked for her too, and it's like it just pains me to know that I hurt her. But as a result of that, we spoke a lot and shared a lot about different things, and it ended up bringing us even closer than we were before. So I'm very, very grateful that I had that conversation with her, that I was open and honest and shared everything I was going through. And as a result of that, even though nothing has changed, from her perspective, it's still like, hey, God is number one, you're number two, and then, everyone else after. Which, is fine. I've accepted, I had no problem with before. It's just there was a period where it's just very difficult for me to accept because it triggered all those insecurities from my past and just made me feel like, okay, well, my dad never loved me, my mom never loved me. Um, you know, I never really loved myself because that's what I was taught through the way that I was raised. I feel worthless. My wife doesn't even love me enough. She loves God above me. So no matter what, I'm always going to be second. And it's like, well, in order for me to, you know, feel good, to not just be depressed and be like, what's the point of anything if no one's ever going to love me, if no one's ever going to see me as the most important thing to them? Well, I had to, I came to the conclusion the only way to avoid feeling like that is, well, I need to learn to love myself. Which, I've done a lot of work on, and I do much more than I did before. Still something I can work on, but it's just, it was good to have that experience of feeling jealous, of feeling like no matter what, I'm never going to be the most important thing in someone else's life, so I need to make myself the most important thing in my life. And I know that's not really true because when it comes down to it, my wife is the most important thing in my life and she always will be. I respect completely her opinion, her viewpoint of like, hey, to me, God is number one and my husband is number two. I respect that. I've accepted in the past. I learned to accept it again. I just kind of went through this phase where it was difficult for me to accept. But for me, it's different. For me, in my list of priorities, it's my wife number one. Then I would say probably me number two, because I know that, I need to take care of myself in order to take care of others. And then in third would probably be God. But to me, it's like, God and faith and everything to do with that is completely separate. So to me, it's not like, oh, well, number one, two, three. It's just like, it's just something completely different. And I get it's kind of the same thing with my wife. Like, her relationship with God is obviously way different than her relationship with me. But in terms of importance, her relationship with God is more important than her relationship with me, which doesn't diminish what we have in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I know that her belief in God and everything that she does has helped her tremendously to, just survive the last year and a half, everything we've been through. And I'm very grateful for that. And it's just, I don't know, it was an interesting experience to have. So I definitely don't regret it, but in the moment, it was very intense. Like that sense of insecurity and like sense of worthlessness that came up and everything, even though it was selfish, even though it wasn't logical, it was still there. It still felt very, very real. And yeah, it sucked in the moment, like a lot, but I'm very, very glad it happened because it allowed me to get even closer with my wife. And that's what I love so much about our relationship is no matter what, we always say, like, tell the truth to each other, share what we're going through. And we know that even if it's difficult, we will always do what's necessary to take care of ourselves as individuals and as a couple. And as a result of that, we just keep getting closer and closer and closer. And it's like I am grateful for everything we're going through because it allows us to develop that incredibly close relationship that most people don't get a chance to really develop because they don't go through something this intense, especially not early on in their relationship. And the fact that we're, not physically together, it means we have to work so much more and ensure that our relationship is so much stronger for it to withstand the distance that it creates such a stronger bond. And that means that when we finally are able to be together, there will never be that fear of like, oh well, what if we're not meant to be together? What if we're too different? What if something bad happens and our relationship doesn't survive? It's like literally the worst that could happen to us has happened and it continues to happen, and that is strengthening a relationship in the very beginning. So anything that comes after that, we know that no matter what, our relationship is going to be strong and can withstand anything. So, going through experiences like this is difficult, but at the end of the day, there's a reason for everything that happens, and it makes us stronger as people and sometimes as couples too. So, it's funny, every time I'm like, I sense the coughing getting more dense, I'm like, oh, time to end the video, but it just, I just never quite have the time to end the video before the coughing starts surfacing. So there always seems to be that seems to be the trend. It's like I share a video, start coughing at the end, then end the video. So I should kind of maybe start practicing and notice the signs sooner so I can end the video right before I start coughing. That would definitely be nice. So anyway, I thought it was important to share this. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you understood because I know a lot of the times when I talk about God or faith or beliefs or things like that, a lot of people tend to misunderstand what I'm trying to say and sometimes get offended. So hopefully this won't happen. But at the end of the day, all that matters is I shared what I felt the need to share, and hopefully you got what you needed to get out of it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Ooh, missed the button.